Hey guys, my name is Juliana Gracia, and as you just heard about authenticity of source, I'm going to be speaking to you guys about authenticity of messaging and what all that entails. And I'm going to go over a few different ways that you can judge it, and then also why it's important and how similar stories can mislead you. So, just to start, authenticity of message refers to the degree to which a message truthfully represents its objects, be it an event, a person, or issues, an individual's judgment of the facts of the content of communication. It is widely assumed that people take shortcuts when judging the reliability of online information because it's much more efficient than analyzing all of the information. And so, basically, what that is when you see an article and you just read the headline, that can be a shortcut that you take mentally, and you can just believe it because it's online and that's what you see and that's what people are sharing. But seeing is not always believing, and that's just something that you're going to have to learn and remember that when you see something and you see just a headline that's kind of weird, maybe it's not true. Like, look at the article, read it fully, research it if you need to. And another thing that was in the article that we read for this class was consensus means correctness, which isn't always true either. Just because your mom and your dad are posting something and you usually believe what they have to say, that doesn't mean that it's correct. Just because everyone that you follow is posting the same thing and sharing the same story doesn't mean that it's right. Do your own research to make sure that you're getting the right information and it's not incorrect, and so that way you can be set up for success and make sure it is correct. And another thing that we tend to rely on as well is that expert statements can be trusted, and that's not always true. Experts make mistakes too, and they're not always going to be correct. They may do a lot of research and end up being wrong, and so it's important for you to take that extra research as well and look at other perspectives and be able to um, really understand what it is that you're looking at. So now we're going to talk about judging authentic messages. And so that they may involve a more holistic top-down assessments rather than a semi-automatic application of simple decision rules. And so there are three types of realism. There's fictionally, external realism, narrative realism. And so if it's fictional, you ask yourself, is this story fiction? Is it, if it's external realism, is this story similar to the real world? And then narrative realism, is the story internally coherent? While processing a story, people construct a mental model to represent its meaning when its incoming information is inconsistent with appropriate counterpart real life and media experiences and or previously obtained information from the narrative about characters and events. So now we're going to move on to similarities in stories. If a story is something similar to what they believe happens in the real world and internally coherent, there's usually little reason to doubt its authenticity. But you need to do more and research it because some stories can look real, but they could be completely fabricated. And it's even more efficient than using a real or utilizing a process whether or not to accept a given message as true. And so, an example I want to show you guys was in the article, and it was this server faked a "we don't tip" terrorist note in Texas. He was a server and he posted it on Facebook, and he read a little clip, or he posted, "Last night at work, I received this note from my table. At the moment, I didn't know uh, what to think or what to say. I was sick to my stomach, and I want people to realize that this is real, and all day I've had to face that my faith is being tested." And so as you see over here, it says "we don't tip terrorists," and his name is Khalil. and they didn't give him a tip. As you can see, it was a pretty big amount, $108.73. But later, Khalil came out and he said that he made up the entire story. And if you would have just read his Facebook post, you would have believed that what he was saying is true, because racism is real and that is something that could probably happen, and maybe it has, but he made it up because he was mad. And I'm not saying that racism doesn't happen, because obviously it does, but you need to do your research and see what is true and what's not. And so I also found another article, and it's just a 10, 10 of the most fake news stories on Facebook that were viewed in 2019, and they're just honestly kind of funny that people view these and maybe even believe them. So one of them is Joe Biden calls Trump supporters dregs of society, and then another one is Tim Allen quotes Trump's wall costs less than Obamacare website. And there are just many of these that are just outlandish, and but people believe them, and people use this information that they just see on Facebook and they believe it. They don't go look at other credible resources. They just look at this. And one of them is Trump is now trying to get Mike Pence impeached. Not true. Fake news. And then this one's kind of funny. Trump's grandfather was a pimp and tax evader. His father was a member of the KKK. So just some crazy stories that aren't true, but people believe. And so I just think that it's important that we do our own research and that we go and we see what is true and what's not, and we don't just leave it up to our Facebook timeline to tell us what we're going to believe. And then we look at different perspectives as well, because some things may be true, but you don't want to actually know it because you're stuck believing a different way. And so I just think that it's important that we try to get different variations of our research. So I'm going to show you this video, and it's basically just showing how fake news can spread. And so I think that this will give us some helpful tips to make sure that we are not spreading fake news.
There's always been fake news, rumors, hoaxes, propaganda. But now, the world runs faster than ever, and communication is easier than ever. Anyone with a smartphone and Twitter account can shout their message to the world. But how does misinformation spread? Who shares these messages? How do you track false information as it ricochets throughout a social network? Indiana University data scientists, led by Filippo Menzer, are building tools to answer these questions. They are the creators of the Observatory on Social Media, or OSOM, which houses tools such as Hoaxy that lets anyone trace the path of a rumor or hashtag as it spreads on Twitter. Another awesome tool, Botometer, lets you see if your new friend is a fake, a bot, or real. Using what they had learned on real social networks, the researchers then created their own simulated social network where they could control the flow of information. It's a bit like how meteorologists predict the weather. But rather than testing how winds or temperatures affect weather patterns, they tested different user ratios and information types. Fill up your simulated social network with a small amount of true and false information, and your simulated users will share the truth. Mostly. But load up that system with noise, and your simulated social media users get stressed out. They start to share information indiscriminately, so false information can go viral as well. That's especially true if you've got a bunch of loud-mouthed bots, which are automated accounts not run by people, drowning out everyone else. The lesson? Information overload makes you share junk. So what can you do? Think before you click. Read the story, not the headline. If it sounds unbelievable, Google it. And don't just follow people who already agree with you. Also, share this video, honestly.
Okay, guys, so I hope that video helped you. Again, just remember that there are different ways to make sure the authenticity of messaging is correct. And just make sure you do your research and you don't rely on just the headlines or just the people that you follow. Make sure you do your own research.